It is Haberman and Middlekoff live on YouTube and in your podcast feed, brought to you by our friends at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka. It is holiday season. It is November. You're going over to somebody's house. You're inviting people over to your house. There's no better thing to walk in the door with than a bottle of Tito's. I was on a conference call yesterday. Somebody said, "What's that helmet behind you?" I said, "That's Tito's." 5 people on the call. Friday night, Tito's. See you guys there.
Yeah, I'd imagine our man Steve Wilks slams some Tito's when he was told to get out of the box. I'd imagine whoever Mark's 17th president is running the Raiders is going to need some Tito's because that job has some turnover issues.
Brewer wrote 3 presidents in 3 years. They fired their CFO on Friday before they hired McDaniels and Ziegler. Nobody noticed.
Belichick, do you see the video of him getting caught?
Nice. What the hell was he going in the wrong house?
Could have been summer, like the beach situation in Nantucket.
Definitely.
Also, like could have been like last week. Kind of also looks like Boston. Hard to tell.
Yeah, but, I mean, same vibe. I'm with you. I definitely had a Martha's Vineyard Nantucket vibe. What was he going into the wrong house? Is that what's happening in that video?
No, he's leaving. Like he's had sex and he's taking off in the morning. It was like the walk of shame.
Well, I saw that's what it said, but I thought it was like trying the door and it wouldn't open. It looked to me like he was
closing it, like taking off is the way. Like he was trying to be quiet when he was leaving.
Gotcha. And he's not wearing a shirt because he just didn't have it on when he arrived, or
my guess is stains, drinking at night, maybe spaghetti on it or something.
Yeah. And why are people leaping to the walk of shame conclusion? How do we know it's not his own? Obviously not his property because he wouldn't have leaked his own video unless it was an Airbnb.
Yeah, I just think it's a classic. It looks like a walk of shame. I think it's pretty clear. And I saw a video pretty recently. I don't know if they went to New Orleans during training camp, but there was a video of him with definitely a younger lady walking around Bourbon Street. So Bill's broken up with Linda.
Yeah.
Clearly a man on the move. I think part of it's that. Like if Bill had been with Linda, it would have been like, God, was he just partying?
Going out to get the newspaper.
Yeah. So I think part of it, a huge element is he's single.
Right.
So everyone's assuming
could have been like in your own bed,
Yeah. I took it as one shared parking lot. So he's, with the people. Maybe Boston heading to work. It's probably 5:30 a.m. He's headed to the office to get where he can shower and change. But is he going to walk into the office with no shirt on?
Well, it's good. Well, I got some shirts at the office. I'll just go in with nothing. Good question. I assumed rental property. Why else would the video get out if it wasn't a rental property? Now,
because she would put it out. She would put it out.
Yeah. Okay. That could be weird.
Or if you wanted to dive really deep, they're just trying to justify that, obviously the on the field product doesn't look good, but it's still hard to fire a guy who's made you billions of dollars and won you Super Bowls, where it's like, he's not as focused. We had to move on. Could that be the Crafts kind of setting someone to follow him?
Yeah.
He just kind of set up like, listen, he's 72. He's not as dialed in. He's single. He's running amok. That to me is a sleeper option in how the video gets out.
A little private investigator. That's not. Yeah. Fired.
Be rich coming from Kraft, who's getting handies at the parlor, but
on game day.
On game day.
They didn't
in Florida when they're playing with the Chiefs.
Hey, but however you celebrate, do it responsibly. Tito's Handmade Vodka, distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas, 40% alcohol by volume, namely proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. Little Tito's and hot tea. What's that? A Tito's toddy, I believe. Depending on what the temperature is where you are. So Tito's, we appreciate you.
About 85 degrees. Thinking about going for swimming. How nice is it where you are?
Well, for pretty nice out actually. A little cool in the house, but I think it's going to be might be. I don't know. Let me see. I'm headed to Boise this week, John. It's going to be 40 there. But right now, 65.
Do you get more the Emeryville city vibe where you are, or do you get more the Walnut Creek Danville sun vibe in terms of the weather? Is it more gloomy or is
no, a lot of sun.
Warm?
A lot of sun.
A lot of sun.
Yeah, a lot of sun.
So it's hot during the day. If it's hot, like
but
if it's Walnut Creek, 100 degrees.
It's no.
What are you?
If it's 100 in Walnut Creek, then it's 82 here.
But it gets cold at night.
This time of year it'll get cold at night. Yeah.
Which summer. I always thought the Bay Area cold at night was a little much for me.
Too cold?
It was like that in Cal Poly. Yeah, I don't like it. I like it about 68.
Yeah.
Because that mist of the water is just
Yeah.
something the MIDDLEKAUFFs aren't really in. It's just too cold.
You're a valley heat people.
That can be too hot. Like I want it 90 at night. I just like it about 68.
Yeah, understandable. Just open up all the windows. You don't even need the fan at that point, but you turn it on. A little slow rotation. Yeah, Bill. All right. So yesterday,
next defensive coordinator for the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, I know Washington wants to trade for him allegedly, but Wilks to the booth, John. From the booth to the Wilks to the field, and this is on the long.
You called it. Never crossed my mind.
It's a college football thing, man.
Yeah, it's never crossed my mind.
It's a we don't have another solution thing.
Once you brought it up, it started getting asked. It became a thing.
Yeah. Do you think I started it?
I don't know. Maybe it was out there in the ether. Did you hear that from someone else? Again,
no,
it never crossed my mind.
To me, it was totally a product of, but I mean, you've watched and worked in it too. It was just a product of being in college football every Saturday for me. It's like, this is what happens in college football every year. It's just what happens, you know?
But so many people in college football, even if you're over 40, are just like first-time coordinators, first time kind of feeling it out. It's not going well. There's pressure on the coach. In the NFL, you're either just a booth guy or you're a sideline. It's not really talked about right now. Maybe with the 49ers, because their last two defensive coordinators were so good, went on to be head coaches, were also so visible in terms of their actions. I mean, Robert Saleh legitimately was going viral for going nuts. And I don't know if D'Amico quite went him, but he was pretty high up there in terms of going nuts on the sideline. Honestly, wouldn't you say of the last like 4 or 5 years, you watch the NFL, it's not, I was watching the Georgia-Missouri game. That dude from Missouri was clearly pretty good. Sneaky like a Muschamp Kirby on the sideline. A maniac.
Drinkwitz?
A maniac on
Eli?
the sideline. Absolute maniac. But you see it a lot in college. In the NFL, there's like, you watch Dan Campbell, for example, or Mike Tomlin or Harbaugh. They don't really do much. They just got to stand there.
I mean, the list is probably Saleh, Sirianni.
But Saleh doesn't do it anymore. Now it's harder.
It's hard. Oh, why? Because he has less to cheer about. Got it.
Less to cheer, but also it's a little, you got to be careful as a head coach, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You see, Saleh said we have a problem. Society places too much of a value on sacks. Society. Unfortunately, we live in a society that puts too much of a value on sacks.
You think he dyes his beard?
Saleh? I think he does. Yeah.
He's 44. He has 7 fucking kids, and Zach Wilson now for 2 straight years has been his quarterback. He doesn't have one gray hair.
For Woody Johnson, Jets.
Doesn't have one gray hair.
Definitely.
One. Why does he need, unless it was all white, be a little weird, make him look old. But if it's salt and pepper, I think it'd be a really good look.
I don't know.
Maybe it's his wife thing.
Maybe wife likes it. But you know, the ongoing story has been that, you know, it's good for the play that Fred Warner communicate. My whole thing the whole time was, if it's a communication issue and the players need to be able to give you feedback, that's a legitimate reason to move from the booth to the field. Anything else is superficial. Now, what we know about Kyle is Kyle doesn't just do shit because other people are telling him to do it, right? He doesn't do it because the media is giving him pressure. He doesn't do it because the fans are putting pressure on him. But he does value the opinion of his players a lot, especially as he's got a lot of really good players whose opinions he values. Would you agree with that?
Yes, especially on defense.
Especially on defense.
Offense, yeah, kind of his way or the highway, but defense for sure. And those guys have proven it. Like, listen, the moment he said those comments, and he didn't impromptu say it, he was kind of asked, but the way that he gave his answer was pretty clear. The unofficial clock was on for Steve Wilks.
You're talking about the play
after the Kirk Cousins game. And then I was listening yesterday at the gym to Lynch with Tim Kawakami. And one thing John said, you kind of justified the Cleveland games. Like, we were kind of right there. You know, the Vikings game, somewhat of a freak play, but Cousins was playing the best football of his life. He's like, the Bengal game, we just got fucking worked. Right. And then, so that comment was said, everything that happened, which I immediately thought unofficial clock for this guy's career with the 49ers was on. Officially, to me, it started now, once this move, like you acknowledge this. But the thing is, part of the booth, let's use Vic Fangio, for example, who the Dolphins actually are playing a lot better on defense. Booth guys, for the most part of the reason that Ken Dorsey clip went viral a year or two ago was because in the booth, it's much more controlled. It's not as emotional as the sideline, right? Well, Steve Wilks looked like on the high end of like, does this guy have a pulse? To think that you're going to come down there, it immediately puts a microscope. Everyone's going to be watching it. The cameras are going to go to it. It's one of the better games this weekend. Obviously, 49er fans watching it no matter what, who they're playing. But it's just, there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. It became an NFL story. I just think that this went from 0 to 60 extremely fast. And now, and I don't blame the players, but for the most part in the NFL, the biggest difference between baseball, basketball, and football, like if Bryce Harper wants the hitting coach fired, he's going to get fired. In the NBA, at the moment's notice, you have a top, I don't know, I'd say 5 player, but it's really more like top 25 player.
It's
they have
just
the
a
amount of
borderline
juice.
max player or a guy that's going to be max.
They have so much power. Anything they want, they get. In the NFL, like the greatest dynasty I've ever saw, Bill didn't listen to fucking anybody. Bill Walsh was notorious for like, Ronnie, we appreciate your services. We're cutting you, right? Joe, we're going with Steve. It's a front office coach league. And that's what makes Kyle, who's pretty sneaky old school, kind of unique with this defense. Like, I think he really values their opinion, and they've earned it. But, like, they weren't feeling this guy. And it was Bosa made some comments. Fred started making some comments. And then you just start getting smoked. Like, I think a lot of people are going to think it's just going to be weird. Like, if he just stands there motionless, fair or not, people are going to be like, what the fuck is this? It's going to look weird, especially if the defense just kind of looks
if they're giving
average.
up points. Yeah.
You know, so it's like, where's he? And that's not his personality. You can't make part of why the Belichick guys always gets crushed. They try to copy, just be yourself. Well, Steve's personality is not Saul or D'Amico. Like D'Amico was like team captain rookie with the Texans in like 06. Robert Saleh just kind of has a natural, God, that guy looks cool and like energetic. That's not really Steve Wilks' thing. It's just not.
But it's also not their problem. Their problem is not playing without emotion on defense. Their problem is they can't get off the field on third down. Their nickel is getting roasted, and they're not getting home on pressure.
I know, but part of moving him to the booth, like just to talk, it's going to be, we're not going to just see them talking. We're going to just see him standing there. They give up a touch. I think it could get really weird really fast. I mean, it already has.
It already has.
I told you before we hit record, I said 50-50, and then I'm like, no. Maybe it's like 80-20. This guy's not going to be the defensive coordinator next year, borderline no matter what. I think he's in major trouble. And this team's going to the playoffs. And hell, they're more than likely going to win a playoff game or two. Who knows? They might go to the Super Bowl. I think this guy's career is in jeopardy with the 49ers. How could it not be, right?
How could it not be? Yeah, I mean, they were 5-0 with this system. They were 5-0 with him in the booth. They were 5-0 not being totally comfortable with the offense. They were 5-0 without Bosa getting home on sacks. They were 5-0 with teams going at Oliver.
It doesn't mean they liked it, everything though, right?
No, that's what I'm getting at. Is like, I think it's very possible that at 5-0, Fred was telling Kyle, like, Kyle, this is not working. So then you get into thin margin games on the road, good teams, whatever, and it bites you. And now it's the perfect chance to do what the players are asking for. My point being, in your scenario where you go to the playoffs and win a couple games, or maybe you compete for the Super Bowl, it's happened before. Teams have separated from coaches. It would be a great problem to have that they're in the Super Bowl, despite the fact that they've lost 3 games in a row right here. But I'm with you. The point is that I don't, the odds they're looking for a defensive coordinator after this year are extremely high, which we thought was going to be the case. But we thought it was going to be the case because it went so well. They're going to be, another comp pick they're going to get for Steve Wilks. Well, he's not getting that, maybe he's a better head coach than he is a coordinator. But now the flip side of that is this. Anytime in any situation you have adversity, it's also a chance for you to respond. So, we talk about this being a big week. They've made 2 dramatic changes on their bye. They traded for Chase Young, and they took their defensive coordinator out of his comfort zone in order to put him in their player's comfort zone, right? Like Kyle even said, I'd rather be in the booth. You got the desk there, you got the monitors, like Steve Wilks is leaving his comfort zone this week.
Well, it's a much more controlled environment, right? It's less emotional. You're more in control. Anyone that's been to the thing that makes football the most unique, I was at dinner last night. Maria has these clients that took them out to happy hour, and we were talking. They are from the South. One went to Auburn, the other went to LSU. And obviously, you just go to these schools; they just know so much about sports. It's crazy, they're just the passion they have, like the ability to just talk about like coaches and just it's. I'm jealous almost. But we talked about like VR and some of these goggles and where it's headed, about sitting courtside or behind home plate. Football is the one unique sport where it's like you actually don't want to be so close,
too close,
right? The ideal view oftentimes is the coach box, like kind of that area. And that's why the suites sell for the most. And anyone that's listening that has gone to games at nicer stadiums, that kind of VIP middle area is typically the most expensive ticket in the National Football League. You charge a premium. There are usually like drinks and stuff included. It's like the club level. The club level is the best seat. Why? Because you see it expand. And you don't realize it, whether you play football, you like football, you just watch it on television, until you go to a game and sit on that perch, the way it looks when it opens up. It is pretty crazy. You see it all. That's why you need people up there to help the coach, right?
Yeah, I remember when Levi's opened, you and I did like a lap. Maybe not when it opened, but a few years. And there's fantastic angles there, right? I've never spent any time like second level corner. I've never in my life sat in that spot at any football game. And it's an incredible view there. Think about like you and I've spent
like
a lot
of Bud Light
area
area that's kind of flat.
You and I have spent a lot of time on the sidelines for football games. You spend a lot of time not exactly knowing what the hell's going on.
No,
hell,
you can't
think
see
about
the
Navarro Bowman pick 6 at Candlestick, the last game. It was you, me, Chris Berman standing there on like the 20. Matt Ryan was about to score a touchdown. Bowman picks it off. He goes running right by us. There goes Harbaugh. And then it's like, well, I think he's scoring. I can't really see, right? I mean, Kyle doesn't.
Well, it's why. I mean, when coaches say, they say a lot of bullshit. Like, I have to watch the tape. I don't really know. I couldn't really see. They're not technically lying a lot of the times, right?
Yeah. They're buying some time, but yeah, they're not. I mean,
especially if the play happens on the opposite side of their team or, down, if they're at the 15-yard, 30-yard line, and the play's at the 1 on the opposite hat. Like, how do you see? So it's, there's a level of, this guy chose to be up there for a reason. He didn't just like flip a coin, like, oh, let's see where I'm going to sit this year. Like, he wanted to be up there. It's where he felt the most comfortable. Now, is he less comfortable with what he's seeing? Obviously, he can communicate with Fred and Nick and Chase, whoever. But the reason Robert Saleh and D'Amico chose to be on the sideline was because that's where they felt most comfortable. This guy chose, like, the reason Vic Fangio is not on the sideline, he wants to be in the booth. He feels he's better. Like, you get the choice. Steve Wilks is not Bobby Slowick or whatever, right? Some super young guy that Kyle probably was going to direct where he wanted. He clearly hired this guy and gave him, Steve Wilks chose, not Kyle didn't tell him, he chose to be there. And clearly this, even if he's on board, like realizes like, I have to do this, this is not a choice. This is a demerit. This is a, we need you down here now. This is not against your will, but like not what you originally wanted to do. And you're dealing with a guy this is not like a 36-year-old up and coming first time guy with this response. This is an older guy, right? Who's been on a lot of different teams, seen a lot of different things. And that's where he wanted to go. So did they hire the wrong guy? Think about Belichick, ultimately the downfall of him. For so long, he was incredible at just having like that next man up, because all those guys would like hire their friends and they'd become Josh McDaniels or Matt Patricia or Nick Caserio or Jason Light or whatever. And it just organically happened. It kind of organically happened for a long time with Kyle, from all the guys he knew in Washington to the ability to bring some of them and then kind of get some of the lower level guys. And then some of the former players that he was around, right? Like D'Amico's a good example. The wide receiver, Hankerson, I think is his wide receiver coach. These guys played for him, and then it was a natural, easy fit. They already kind of spoke the same language. He ran out fast with the defensive staff because 2 of his defensive coaches got hired. Obviously, they would just slowly hire some guys as well, and he just didn't have because in a perfect world, for any coach, you hire the guy who's ideally already on your staff, or like what McVay did, him and Raheem Morris, boys, easy transition, right? Kyle just didn't really have that this time. And they kind of went in. Ideally, I think he wanted Fangio, but I think he probably thought long and hard. He's like, we do something well. And I don't blame him. You don't want to just change your product when the product's working. But like if you had a do-over on that one, you'd be like, let's just figure this out with Vic.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, Vic or Wilks or Raheem, like they're perfect candidates because they've guys that have been, especially Wilks and I could see Raheem becoming a head coach again, but he hasn't had that many, But Wilks had kind of had 2 shots at it, one really tough shots. Fangio, it feels like neither Fangio nor Wilks is going to be a head coach again, and so it's kind of
Fangio for sure.
Fangio for sure. It's kind of perfect if it works. Like the guy's not going anywhere. You can just have your Dick LeBeau, right? Whereas you hire like the guy,
Andy with Spagnuolo, right? Spagnuolo is going to be his defensive coordinator.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great example. Like the guy I was thinking of yesterday is Mike McDaniel, the Ravens defensive coordinator, going to get a head coaching job? Because if he does, their next DC might be, what do they like to do? Go send guy out, bring him back. Danton Lynn.
Yeah.
But maybe would Kyle like him? Like Anthony Lynn is on Kyle's staff. Would Kyle want to hire Danton Lynn to be his DC? I'm getting way ahead. I mean, he's UCLA's defensive coordinator. He's
that's pretty risky in their scenario, right? Like if Lincoln Riley hires Anthony Lynn's son, you'd be like, well, he just did it with UCLA. Bring him. It's not as you're mitigating some of your risk for the 49ers. First-time coordinator who's not your guy, like that'd be a pretty bold move.
It would be. It would be, and it would put them. They'd be back if it works. You'd be back in this spot again in a year or 2, right? Like that's kind of what we're talking about. Is you just keep cycling. The thing
you'd be like the head coach at like Penn State in 2 years,
right? But these Ravens guys seem to like come back to the NFL.
Well, John and Jim just passed back and
forth. So I think Danton maybe he becomes Jim's DC at the Raiders next year. But one thing,
a lot of people think that Lincoln Riley's going to be sniffing around him.
I would think so. Yeah.
Double his pay.
Now that's the thing is like, can he? Like if you're UCLA, you're going to the Big Ten with USC. You can't let it. You got to keep this guy, right? You got to pay him. But
especially if you beat USC, like what are we doing?
You can't. You got to step it up on that. But one thing I would say about the Niners and the Shanahan era, for all the highs and lows, they've pretty consistently had a very high level of trust between the coach and the players, between the offensive coach and the offensive players, the offensive coach and the defensive players, and the defensive coach and the defensive players. And that's where this feels like it's different for them, right? Like I saw some stats of the DeMeco Ryans' first 8 games versus Steve Wilks' first 8 games, and Steve Wilks is over 500. DeMeco was below 500. Steve Wilks, the numbers are better. It feels like there is we're here.
Their offense was so much worse, though. I bet if we put it into context, like they were on the field more. This offense is so much better scoring points.
Yeah.
Even when they were struggling 17 points the last couple games, they were throwing for 350 yards. I mean, it's a different team, right? I think you have to put that. I would imagine it feels like that 2021 team, their defense they were relying on them a lot more. I mean, the offense is moving the ball at will, getting them more first downs. It was a struggle that, Trey Lance's rookie year with Jimmy Garoppolo was starting to trend the other way as a player.
Yeah. But my point is there is a trust has never really been the problem. And it feels like Steve Wilks is now on the field because the players asked for that.
You're saying with even the struggles with DeMeco, like no one ever for a second didn't believe in the guy.
Yeah, or just like there was not a disconnect, and it feels like we're here because there's a disconnect. And that's unusual.
I just think. Well, sometimes, and I don't care who you are, you got to go like outside of the circle, and then that guy can become your guy in football. Right. Like Kerr has done that. Like eventually he lost some guys. Eventually he got like Kenny Atkinson. And then now Kenny Atkinson, who will eventually become another head coach, I'm sure, will just be viewed more as like a Steve Kerr guy, and a Warriors guy. Like Mike Brown forever was outside the circle. And then what is Mike Brown viewed as? Like, oh, he's Steve Kerr's right-hand guy, like Warriors guy, you know? If you have success, and
sure Mike Brown was LeBron's coach.
You get in that circle. Mike Brown, like, had coached Kobe, had gone to a fucking.
Steve Kerr made him.
But that's what you want when you need to kind of resurrect yourself to get back in that little circle. And a lot of times it's hard to get in that circle. Let's use Andy as an example. Like, who are his coaches right now? It's like Kafka played for him. I know he's gone, but like Nagy, Spagnuolo, who worked for him, like he kind of went back to the well, and it works because that's ideally what you're most comfortable at.
Doug was part of the well, right? He coached Doug Peterson.
Yeah, you like your guys who know what you're doing and you can win with. It's like a perfect world. But you get in the situation, sometimes you don't have that option. And I think for the first time in his career, he didn't really think of who he hired to be his quarterback coach 2 years ago. It was like Brian Greasy. Like, it's actually not that weird because Brian had played for the Shanahans. Kyle had said, I'd known this guy for 20 plus years. I'm sure even when Greasy was calling college football games, they texted a lot. Like, they're probably good friends. And I
also a position where Kyle can afford to take a risk because he can manage it.
For learn on the job. But I bet Kyle would say, like, this guy played in the league for 15 years. Like, he knows quarterback play too. But like you said, he gets to influence that, right? Because that's his baby, the offense. The defense is not his baby. It's not. It's just he doesn't really have much to do with it in the sense of, let's face it, the majority of his week is doing big picture stuff for the team. And I don't know, getting ready to call the game on offense. I don't know Kyle's schedule on a weekly basis or daily basis.
I know he's talking.
I would imagine today. Wouldn't you imagine the pie chart skews offense?
Yes.
So watching the opponent's defense, watching his own team's offensive practice plays against the looks he thinks he's going to getting and figuring it out through the week. I'm not saying he spends every second in an offensive meeting, but the gap is wide. It's impossible for it not to.
I think it's got to go offensive responsibilities, head coaching responsibilities. Well, it goes head coaching, but in terms of the pie chart, it's probably offensive stuff and then head coaching stuff. And the head coaching stuff includes administrative bullshit that head coaches have to press conferences, the stuff head coaches have to deal with.
Exactly. Like, let's just pick an arbitrary 7:00 on Tuesday nights. So they're going to meet with the players on Wednesday morning. Him and Steve meet for an hour, and Steve kind of goes over the game plan, the option, right? Like what his ideas are to give to the players. A lot of coaches do that, right? They meet with the guy on the opposite side of the ball, and they go over, because Kyle's been in the offensive meetings the whole time. So and maybe it's 2 hours. I don't know. And so I'm not saying Kyle doesn't peak at the other team's offense, but it's got to be on the pie chart a small percentage. So there's just a lot on the plate of this individual, right? The Anton Lynn's a good example. That guy's success, I think why he's going to get even more credit from, you get credit when you're good, but it's like, well, that's his baby. We know Chip has nothing to do with it, right? Nothing to do with it.
Yep.
Mike McDaniel, why do you think it's incredible for Vic? I'm sure they paid him a lot of money, but why it's a great job? No one's going to fuck with me. No one's even going to talk with me. This guy was begging me to come. Leave me alone. And Vic was at the spot where that was going to be the case, probably no matter where he went.
Yeah.
But that is the best part about the 49ers. They have sweet players, and your coach leaves you alone. Unless you fuck up, and then he's proven this year he will drive the bus right over your head.
Steve
and make
Wilks,
you apologize to the country.
Yeah. Steve Wilks, speaking with the media on Thursday, said that he thinks going to the sideline is going to help communicate with his coaches and players, but also believes people are making a bigger deal of it than it really is.
Bullshit.
I think Kyle has contributed to that, though.
If
you know what I mean, like if this whole thing was no one had talked about it until Wilks did a press conference and said, you know what, guys, the other thing is this week I'm going to go to the booth talking to the players. The feedback I've gotten is that we're just not on the same page, and being on the field is going to help us communicate. This would have been a 24-hour story max. I'm like, oh,
totally agree.
Actually, it would have been like, you know what? Good for them making an adjustment. Like, appreciate that. Like, not being stubborn. Gotta love it. Adjustments. Listening to the players. I mean, not too good to listen to the players. Gotta respect it. They must have a great two-way relationship. Like that's what the story could have been.
When did Kyle say that we'll discuss it or whatever? Was that before the bye? Like week really started?
That was
that like
before the bye. Yes, that was.
That would have been like after the Monday, like the
Yeah.
Monday after the Bengals game.
I'm going to talk about it with like, not even I've talked to him about it and we're thinking about it, but like, yeah, it's on. I'm telling you guys first that I'm about to go talk to him, and then I'll let him know as well.
Yeah, before he goes to Puerto Vallarta for 3 days on his bye week.
I've also told him no vacation for him.
So you don't get to do that. You just, and this is where Steve
didn't have to be this way though.
It didn't have to be this way. Outsider like this, we know what big deals and not big deals are with this team, right? Like ultimately, Bosa's holdout was becoming a bigger deal because like, is he going to be? But there was never like he won't be on the team. Like everyone knows. I would say the nuts and bolts of this operation now. Some people thought I was crazy, but I said from a mile away, I'm like, this backup quarterback situation. And then Silver, it felt like took it to the nth degree, and everyone's like, oh, he's crazy. No, he's dead fucking right. They had discussions about cutting him. Like this team, it's like Belichick. I would say heading into the 2010s, you knew like, oh, this guy's up for a contract. Bill's going to trade this player. Like, wait, this guy's been 3 straight Pro Bowlers. Like, this is his last year on the Patriots. It was just easy to like, and it was just tried and true formula. Bang, bang, bang. Like, there goes Logan. There goes this guy. Gronk's pissing him off. He's going to trade him. It's just that you know how these guys operate. And this, to me, was, I would say, out of character is probably the wrong way to put it, but the biggest curveball in terms of something like this we've seen with the coaching staff. And a lot has to do with, like you said, everyone was comfortable with each other and everyone believed in each other and everyone started with each other. This guy's an outsider for the first time getting to play a massive role. And it didn't go well enough. It didn't go terribly, but a 3-game stretch that it's just simply not allowed in the NFL when you view yourself as a powerhouse. It's just not allowed. It's allowed if you suck. Or even if you're like going to go 7-10, people wouldn't notice. Like, oh, they got to get better on defense. When you're like, it's kind of Super Bowl or bust this year. And I would even say, as long as they got Purdy on this contract, they got a couple-year window, last year, this year, next year. Like, it's the pressure on this operation is fucking high.
It feels like this year it's so pressurized because, and you're right about Purdy, but like, are you going to be on the team next year? Right? You might look at the team next year and they got some first-round receiver who's trying to develop. And Jennings is on his last year. And
they do have a lot of caps. Like, they could do some big things in the offseason, though, even if Ayuk's not. Like, they got $42 million. Like, is Chase Young just sweet for them? Is he just still on the team next year?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you're right. The window is as long as your quarterback.
They got options.
But they've knocked on the door a lot. Yeah. And come up short a lot, And it's not like it's not like they're actually going to the Super Bowl every year. They've done that once.
But the other problem is there are 3 or 4 teams. Like, the Chiefs are the only team that are like, if we don't win the Super Bowl, we've still gone to 3 and won 2 of the last 5. It would suck, but we've rattled off. Like, we won championships. Then there's this group of teams, the Eagles, the Bengals. I mean, I wouldn't say the Bills are dead yet. They're trending the wrong way. That are also in that area of like, it's kind of Super Bowl or bust for us, right? We're right there. We're knocking on the door. And I would say specifically the Eagles and the Bengals, right, are just like, they view themselves just like the Niners, if not better. Obviously, the Bengals shit out of the Niners.
What the Eagles have done, and you said it on the last pod, in looking like a championship level team while not being 100% is a pretty encouraging thing for them. The second the Niners stopped being 100%, they fell apart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the Chiefs have done consistently now. Like, you look at the Chiefs like, I don't know. Are they the same? And then they win 13 games.
Well, I would say one thing when you watch the Eagles, they're paying Bradbury a lot of money. They just traded for Byard from the Titans. Their secondary, I mean, Dak, they were getting smoked in that game. But one thing that where the coordinators have both, I would say, been under some scrutiny, but that hasn't changed when you watch the Eagles. You're like, their defensive line is just all over the quarterback constantly. So I think most fans, and I'd even say most coaches know that, like, unless you got Dion or Revis, like, your corners are going to give up some yards, whatever. But if the guys we're paying all the money to and are supposed to be going to Pro Bowls and we drafted really high, aren't fucking peppering the quarterback, we got problems. And I think that's kind of got weird. And then what happened? It wasn't quite working. He started mixing in blitzes, and then it just threw everything off. And I saw a quote from Dante Whitner to say the communication of just from the scheme to it was just everything was off. Sherman and these guys have talked about the zone and the man defense. It's just all out of whack. That's the problem. Like, yeah, the Eagles, like Bradbury might get smoked, but Reddick and Jalen Carter are in the quarterback's face. The Niners are getting smoked. And you're like, God, is Joe Burrow eating a hot dog back there? I think that was the problem. If you were giving up some plays, but the defensive line, it felt like was just the same as it's been, I don't think it would have been as intense. But it feels like, well, we're all in. Like all of our chips are in on those, especially now with Chase Young on that group. If they're not dominating, no one's blaming Kasarik. They're blaming like the operation.
That's where it feels
Which
like
might, who knows? Is that even fair?
That's where it feels like the lack of sacks is not nothing. In the sense that, like,
Salah said, it's a societal problem.
I know it's we're raising our children wrong. It's all these left.
I think people like the analytical community. One thing they are right on is pressures, quarterback hits. Right.
I actually agree with Robert. It's just so funny when you say societal problem. I agree with him, but I think where it is with the Niners is like it feels like the eye test doesn't match. That's part of it too, right? And I know you look at the pressures and the PFF numbers, and Bosa's right up there, and like, it feels like it's okay. If Bosa's up there on pressures, shouldn't somebody else be getting the sacks? Right? Like, I think that's where the disconnect is when people say, like, oh, Nick's not getting sacks. Don't oversimplify it. It's like, I agree. There's other ways to create pressure, but nobody else, in theory, like he's getting double teamed and creating all this pressure. Shouldn't somebody else then be unblocked? Why isn't anybody else getting the sack? Like, they're not getting the quarterback.
I was gonna send you this chat so you can put it up.
Yeah,
I found a good PFF tweet that makes you just go, because the stats are kind of in their favor. Like if you're Steve Wilks, you're like, you guys are fucking nuts. What is going on here? But you're right. The eye test for 3 straight weeks, right? For 3 straight weeks, and definitely the 2 weeks, because ultimately the Niners, like, okay. On the road, like you said, if we were going to go 13-4, losing to Cleveland, who's having this historic defense, not even that weird of a loss. But then you're playing Cousins, who obviously ended up tearing his Achilles, but that's a tight player, a Pro Bowl level guy you're going to have to beat to win a Super Bowl, right? And then you play Joe Burrow, who you literally might have to play in the Super Bowl, and they just eviscerate you. So you're like, this is a problem. It's one thing to lose. It's another thing. It turns into basketball. It's like, well, we can't stop LeBron or Steph. Well, we've hung our hat on at least being able to neutralize those guys a little bit. And those guys were just having like days where their team's like, yeah, that's why we pay him $45 million. And that's what was concerning. It's not like it hadn't happened. Last year, D'Amico, the Chiefs, I forget the score, but it feels like it was 75-2 when they played the Chiefs. And I mean, they've had bad games. But I think the Cousin things was probably really jolting to everybody. It's like, that's not Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. Okay. That guy. And then for Joe Burrow, after you just get your teeth kicked in for just the gates to just open and the water just rolling in. It's like, we're just underwater now. What's going on? Felt like no one had any answers, which was scary. Cause I think Fred, did he say it in his press conference, or sometimes I end up clicking in his little press conference or his podcast he does with his wife. Fred drops a couple nuggets on there. And Fred said that, like, he maybe said it at his press conference to go, like, it'd be after you get your ass kicked, you really, it's good to, have a game the next week. He's like, but we had that happen to us. So why would we think anything different was going to happen? So maybe it is a good time to have a bye week. Right. We've literally we've had 2 losses in a row that we came out worse the next week. So you want to get back on the horse. Well, not if there's no saddle and you're falling off.
Not if you got a gas. Not if the horse needs a bath. And
they fell out of gas in the Bengal game for sure.
Hey, so here's the stat that you wanted. Niners.
I mean, they have more pressures than anyone else.
56 pressure, first in the league.
You're right. It doesn't. The eye test doesn't feel like that.
And maybe it's like, hey, quarterbacks are getting it out quick. All right, well, if your best pitch, like they can hit it, what else you got?
And I wonder specifically if we did a game-by-game breakdown of the pressures, the last 2 weeks were way worse. And those are just big games, right? Cousins, Burrow, and didn't even feel like you were around them.
Yeah,
Burrow can move better than Cousins, but Cousins is a sitting duck. He can't move. He's just a pocket quarterback. They've annihilated that player, like what Cousins represents.
True. That's very true.
Their entire run, even to like Brady last year, right? If you can't move, you're fucked. The Burrow type that can move around a little bit has definitely given him some trouble. I mean, he gives everybody trouble. But the Cousins game, and that's what pissed me off about the Wilks thing, is like it felt like everyone put it on the Wilks on the one play. It was like, there was more to it. There were a million other third downs.
That's where we defended him. We defended that.
Does it feel like they lead the league in pressures?
No, it doesn't. They had a great game against I'm just looking at, I can't get their individual, I can get their pass rush grades, which is different, but per game.
I mean, the pressures against the Steelers,
the Browns and Vikings
the
were their
Rams.
two worst games.
Yeah. From
a pass rush standpoint. And then
last week clearly didn't go great.
Last week what?
I'm saying, well, the last week, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, the Bengal game clearly didn't go great.
Yeah, I mean, their best pass rush games of the year were Cowboys, Giants, Rams, Steelers.
Yeah. No blows.
They also, they're funny because it doesn't like, their defense can help out when their offense is struggling. I'm not saying this defense can, but like generally this team is built where the defense can help out the offense. The only way the offense can help the defense is if they have the lead, because then they can run the ball. But the offense, this is in theory, I guess, Mike McDaniel. If Vic's defense is shitty one day, Mike's team can we'll just go score. We can just shoot out. Yeah. This team can score a lot of points, but they don't do it in shootout style, right? Like they wear you out after 4 quarters. You look up, you're like, fuck, they put 40 on us. But
yeah, they're not like when the Bills are rolling or the Bengals, and they're just like, obviously Purdy is a much more explosive passer than anything they've ever had, but they're not a typically 2 plays, touchdown drive, 2 bombs, right? That's not really their thing. They usually, well, the run game's a huge part of what they do. And to me, listen, and sometimes it's freaky. Remember, it was either last year, it would have been last year. There was a stretch where the Chiefs were turning it over at a stupid rate. McCaffrey's fumbled a couple times. I mean, they've had some kind of freaky fumbles
in the red zone.
Yeah, so it's just while the turnovers came at the end of the game from Purdy a couple weeks in a row, the fumbles on a drive when you're gonna get 7 points, especially Kyle on a first drive, that's a pretty big kick in the dick.
Yeah,
I guess that was the Minnesota game, but did he fumble against the Bengals? Someone fumble against the Bengals? It was 6 weeks ago, that game.
Did somebody fumble against the Bengals? Oh, Brock
fumbled
against the Bengals at the end of the game.
Yeah, but there wasn't an early turnover in that game. I don't know. Obviously, McCaffrey had the fumble on the first drive after Charvarius got the pick against Minnesota, and they were going to score on that drive. It was like, God, they were going to score quick. Listen, a turnover. It used to that'd be the other thing. It's not like they didn't turn the ball over, Jimmy, but the defense, you felt much better about it. Right, that's the other thing. Right now, this is where the eye test and the feel. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a problem. And I'm telling you, I think that it's gonna put a huge microscope on this team in this game. I mean, what if just Trevor Lawrence goes right down the field? I mean, they're coming off a bye. You don't think Doug and Trevor feel good about their game plan, right? To open the game, do they just give up, even if it leads to a field goal, like just an easy drive down the field, or does it look like, goddamn, boys are ready? That first drive to me is the most fascinating first drive on defense I can remember now.
It's a good call. Debo being healthy helps, right? Aaron Banks isn't going to play. We'll see with Trent. So they could, if you got Feliciano out there and no Trent, you are susceptible, but you got Debo back. So I saw NFL Live had a stat today, like 3 major categories. Purdy's number 1 in the league so far when he's on the field with Debo. The fact is that Kyle's off. Wilks is getting a lot of the heat. Well, Kyle's offense is scoring 17 points.
Yeah.
And they're just like the point I was trying to make about them not being an offense that can carry the defense is like they are really, it's such a cliche, but they are so complimentary. They are they are more complimentary than any other good team probably in the league, where it's like, if you told me the Bengals defense is off, like Burrow could just, all right, shoot out. Let's go. How many is it going to take today? I got you guys. Right.
Well, here's the thing. The Jags defense isn't that good. Their offense, like when you just pull up their stat sheet, one, ETN, who's kind of like a Tony Pollard, who when the Niners played the Cowboys, Greenlaw and Fred Warner looked like Bowman and Willis. Like he had nowhere to go. But they got 3 receiving options and a pretty mobile quarterback. Like one thing we've talked about, the Cousins, that mobile quarterback, like the Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, they're not like Lamar Jackson running, but they definitely can run to keep plays alive. Always gives them trouble. Ridley and Kirk are just good receivers. And Ingram is basically like a poor man's version of like Travis Kelce. He's a pass-catching tight end. To me, they got like 4 options on offense and a mobile quarterback who's just a pretty good player. Number 1 overall draft pick, greatest prospect since like Luck. Like this is a pretty big test for Wilks and the boys. Like this is not just, okay, get right against Tommy DeVito or like, Aiden O'Connell. This is number 1 pick, 6-2, and their offense like is just very productive. And they spread you out. Like they're not going to hammer ETN between the tackles. He's much more of like an Alvin. They're going to throw the ball to him. To me, this is more of a spread space. I don't know, man. I do not think it's going to be easy for Wilks this game.
I was going to tell you, well, the good news is the Jags are ranked 17th in pass blocking, but the Niners are ranked 29th. So they accommodate their offensive line because they get the ball out fast. And it's on the road. I mean, Niners have not been good on the road other than Pittsburgh so far this year.
Whose offense is just not good.
You just look at them and think, I mean, they couldn't possibly lose 4 in a row. But they could. They could. If they turn it, if their quarterback keeps turning it over in key moments and their defense can't get off the field, then that's about as bad a recipe as you can get. Defense can't get off the field, quarterback turns it over in key spots.
You lose 4 games in a row and you're 5-4. That's be hard for me to take you that seriously, especially when you're losing.
Do you think if
Cousins in Minnesota clearly was a wild card team, Burrow Super Bowl contender, and this Jags team, they're not a Super Bowl contender, but they should probably win a playoff game, and they're going to win their division. Like you're just losing to good teams. So like part of being a good team is you clearly have the Cowboys number, right? Which is a good win in theory, but like, okay, you beat the Cowboys, so you say, let's play these other random good teams, and you're losing to them all. And the Browns, I mean, the Browns are probably going to the playoffs. You're just losing to all these playoff teams. So I'm going to feel good once you figure it out and you get to like 11-6. Like, oh, they're good for. Well, they've lost all these playoff teams. Okay, they beat Seattle, whatever. Yeah, they're used to playing Seattle. How about just the random teams?
Dude,
I would not feel good.
No, you're so right. I was just looking at the schedule before you said that, and just think about like, because people have asked, like, well, you know what? Is 10 wins good? Is 11 wins good? Well, let's go through it. Let's say you lose this game, you're 5-4. You beat Tampa 6-4. Own Seattle 7-4. I'm being generous.
This is a pretty. You win this game, your next game's Tampa. That's you'd be in pretty good position to get the ship right, and all of a sudden you're 8-4.
Yeah, 8-3. Tampa then Seattle. So you could get yourself to 8-3 before Philly. But I'm just saying, let's just say you lose this game, you're 5-4. Beat Tampa and Seattle 7-4. Lose to the Eagles 7-5. Beat Seattle again 8-5. Beat the Cardinals 9-5. Lose to the Ravens 9-6. Beat the Commanders 10-6. Beat the Rams 11-6. Like we just got to 11 wins with like one good win, which would be Dallas. I mean Seattle, I guess. But I'm being generous on beating Seattle twice at this point. But that I just said you lose to the Ravens, the Eagles, the Bengals, the Vikings, the Browns. Does that feel like an 11-win team that you feel great about going to the playoffs?
Yeah, to me, that Seattle, Eagles, Ravens stretch of those 4 games is a pretty big stretch. Like you go 2-2, but you sweep Seattle. That's not great, right? No one's taking you seriously as a Super Bowl contender if you're losing to the Ravens and the Eagles.
Right.
If you go 3-1 and win one of those games, right? Because you could lose the Eagles if you beat the Ravens or vice versa and feel really good about yourself, right?
Yep.
You could honestly go 2-2 and lose the Seattle game on the road. It'd feel bad. And if you win one of those Eagles-Ravens game, that'd be a big win.
Well, especially if you win the Jags game, right? You win the Jags game, you're 7-3 going in that stretch. You're 2-2, you're 9-5.
Yeah.
But that still gets you to 11, which doesn't feel great.
Would you rather beat the Eagles on the road or the Ravens at home? You beat the Eagles on the road, that'd be a massive
Probably
win.
the Eagles on the road, yeah.
Because the Ravens game, like it's kind of a one-off, kind of like the Bengals. Like
Especially,
ideally, you'd like to see them again in the Super Bowl, but like that's a good problem to have.
And you'd love to say that, like, oh, beating the Eagles on the road is a tiebreaker thing, but I mean, we'll see. Philly's 8-1. You're 2 games behind them right now.
I think you win that game, you are just favored in every playoff game beside the, potentially like on the road at the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Like you beat the Eagles and you get to 11-12 and you win this division, everyone takes you seriously again.
Yeah.
I think right now they're teetering. Like you said, you lose this week. How does everyone just like, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. Like who the fuck loses 4 straight games in football?
They just threw their best pitch. Chase Young and moved the coordinator.
I know.
Now, you don't have Trent. You could always keep doing that thing. It's like, well, you don't have this guy. You don't have that guy. But, that's everybody. Everybody's playing that game. You're not special because somebody's hurt.
Cowboys have had a million injuries. Eagles star tight end just broke his arm.
Oh, well, the schedule. We got hosed by the schedule. Well, I mean, the Eagles just played Miami and Dallas and beat them both. They got Kansas City and Buffalo coming up. Are they going to – feels like they're going to – I mean, they're not getting swept by the Chiefs and Bills, right? They're going to be 9-2 at least when they play the Niners. What if they're coming off a win over the Bills?
Do you know if you were to lose this game, and the Raiders were to beat the Jets, both teams would have 5 wins? Now the Raiders haven't had their bye, so they've played an extra game. But still.
Max Crosby, quote, "I was meant to be a Raider. I don't fit in." I like you, love Max Crosby. I think I would bail on all that shit if I were the Raiders. Enough. The rebels of the league. What rebels? What do you guys do? How are you rebels? We just don't belong. We embrace it. You're in Allegiant Stadium. What are you talking about? You moved into the neighborhood with all the other big homes. How are you the rebels? Enough. What is that? More importantly, what has that gotten you? It hasn't gotten you a freaking thing. It doesn't get
well,
you
it used
anything.
to be. It used to be cool in the 70s and 80s when they were winning.
Give it up already. Give it up.
But you have to understand that's how they, and I know that's like a huge part of their cult. Like he's told that by Antonio Pierce. I'm a Raider from Compton. Like, what do you think he's telling them?
Yeah, I know. This is not college. We're like, oh, this school, we only get like 3-star kids into this school. Sign and develop. This is the NFL. You get as many good players as everybody else gets.
You know what the Patriots and the 49ers, the 2 football dynasties that encompass the last 40 years, their mantra was like, we're going to outcoach you and beat the fuck out of you. What time's kickoff? We plan on outcoaching you and beating you. Our players are smarter than your players. They're going to make open field tackles and score touchdowns.
Well, you know what also those 2 examples have? They have one coach who establishes the culture. The Raiders have like 3 CFOs, 17 coaches, no playoff wins, and they average 6.5 wins the last 11 years. The culture somehow.
But you have to understand, like, all in fairness to Max, like all he knows, like Gruden fired on Monday Night Football. I'm not blaming Max at all. Max lived that life also. It's very personal to Max. But I'm saying as a brand, it's not a winning way to present this brand anymore. And it doesn't matter. You're an NFL team. It doesn't work like that anymore in the NFL. You're all so rich. All these teams have everything. There's no reason to be the franchise that doesn't fit in. You don't want to not fit in to the NFL. You want to fit in. I know. Well, he's tried, right? He just did try with Josh.
Yeah.
But I even mean like the stadium, and then Josh and Ziegler felt
Yeah,
like
Josh
a very
is a
normal
mainstream
NFL
head
move.
coach. You're right.
Yeah. And it to me is what makes owning these sports teams so hard. Because in theory, like, God, this guy has already failed. He went back and apprenticed. Tom Brady swears by the fucking guy. He looks me in the eye. He tells me he's got it. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? You know, it's so easy to hire people that have like, I've done this, X, Y, and Z. This was the ROI on the company that I ran. I did this marketing campaign. It worked. It's so hard. I'm like, well, I was the offensive coordinator. Well, did Bill fire in your headset like half the time, tell you to run? Like, you don't actually know anything that's going on. Even the players, there's a level in which they don't know. Right? I was thinking about sometimes on some of these conversations, this Louis Riddick clip went viral about, he said on Get Up that when he was a scout, in the 2000s, science ceiling was everything, right? That's when you advanced scout at a team, you brought your binoculars. He said, I have books upon books of our weekly game plan with signs in there that we did, kind of, defending some of this old, and these other former players. I know Jeff Saturday coached for a minute, but it's like all these former players up there. And you just think about the gap between, even though the coach, the GM, and the players on a weekly are all together, but there is this line of stuff going on upstairs that a player's just not truly going to know.
Right.
In conversations they're not going to be privy to. Like, yeah, you might have conversations that a coach isn't privy to, but it's just talking shit about them. It's not like, no, you got to do what they tell you to do. Like, you're mad at them, but those coaches are saying, do this because we got this. And I just think that part of it is like, I do wonder if there's an element to the Raiders and just football in general where it's just hard to bridge this gap. And I think the Raiders are the farthest, just kind of in no man, like caught in this world of holding on to the past. Like, ultimately, for example, with Jim, do I think he was tired of getting his ass kicked and like just wanted to take it to another 100%? Like, but is he alone? Like, when I see Paul Feinbaum saying that the thing's going to be tainted, it's like, Paul, you cover the shadiest fucking conference that paid people. And listen, I have no problem with any players getting paid fucking 50 years ago, let alone right now. But like, it was legitimately illegal, and you had all the highest payrolls. Like, you guys and Nick Saban like cheated your fucking ass off. So for you to act like it's all under the same umbrella. It's all a bunch of bullshit. It's why the cool thing about the NFL, like you said, like, everyone's supposed to be kind of equal. Everyone's got money, unlimited. Thing with college is like, well, some programs actually there are very disadvantaged. In the pros, like, Mark gets the same check from the league that Jerry gets. Jerry makes extra money doing other stuff, but like, Mark has the money to pay a coach $80 million to get the fuck out of there. And if he wants to, he can go buy Harbaugh for $100 million.
Yeah. I saw the Feinbaum, unrelated to the Raiders, but to Harbaugh. I thought this when the scandal started, but I didn't say it because I didn't want to, like everyone always says, this is the craziest blank I've ever seen. But this truly, of 25 years in sports talk, John, I have never been more confused by a scandal than I am by this mission. Like, I've never felt more detached, like my opinion versus the way this thing's being treated, by any controversy of my sports covering lifetime. It blows my mind how differently I don't care at all. Like, I just keep thinking like, wait, we're mad because he went to a game and just filmed their signs at a game from the stands, not in game filming and like signaling with a light or some like Astros shit. Just, he went to a game. He saw the same signs everybody else saw. We know they're not hiding them because all these teams do this stupid sign. And then they just broke them down. And then it does not, I get there's a bylaw. You're not allowed to scout at games, which is so, I'm not allowed to scout at games. There's 100,000 people there. I this is the stupidest controversy of my life. I really don't get it. I really don't understand. I get why it's something. I don't get why it's this much.
Well, because it's pretty clear what happened. Harbaugh was tired of getting his ass kicked, so he took it to another level. Well, then who started getting their ass kicked? Ohio State, whose brother is part of like that uncovered this. Ryan Days. Did you see that part of the story?
No.
So it's like Ryan Day, Ohio State was behind the uncovering of this because I think Ryan Day's brother is like whatever industry he works in, PI, whatever it is. Like he was part of it. So it's all, why does he care? Well, he didn't care when he was fucking kicking Jim's ass. Well, what happened the last two years? People start going, Ryan, are you going to be the head coach here in a couple of years? Are you going to lose this? You were born on third base. It doesn't get any better than this. This is a better job. You could argue than like half the NFL. We pay you $10 million every fucking year. You have a squad. School recruits itself. If you put a little effort in, you could argue it's the biggest behemoth. I mean, they are, to me, every bit Alabama or Georgia, like just in terms of how consistently awesome all their players are and how much it matters, how big the program is, how much the school cares. They got it all. And I think his back was against the wall. And so they did. So to me, this is all like, if you read Shoe Dog, it's like Adidas trying to kill Nike and then Nike got big. That's all this is. And it's not actually like, are they just better than you now? Like, has he caught up? Not because some former Marine. Now, there are cool, like, funny parts of this story. Like, he owns some business or house with Blake Crum. It's like, there's some weird shit going on.
You see that part? 30 vacuums on Amazon, refurbished. But this is what I'm getting at. Like, I understand that. Like, somebody just made a chat in the comments, Guy, you're cool with cheating. This is the heart of what I'm talking about. It's like, it's only this cheating is like, he's at a game with 100,000 people looking at the same signs everybody else. It's just not the same cheating as like the Astros cheating is far. That is cheating. This is just like, you scout everything else. I just don't get how this doesn't feel quite like morally corrupt cheating to me, even though I know there's a rule about it, but it just seems kind of dumb. Like, just let everyone scout everyone's signs. I don't get it.
And here's the other thing. Like, everyone kind of knows everyone's trying to steal a sign. So it's like on you, change them. Right.
I think the whole signs thing is, I've always thought it was so stupid. You got like signs and you got like curtains, then you got like, it's so dumb.
Well, why don't they just allow the headset in the Power 5?
I don't know.
Which clearly that's what this is going to lead to, right?
Yeah, apparently. Are they doing it in bowl games, I think, or something?
I just have a hard time. And listen, Feinbaum, I respect him, but he's got a little Skip Bayless to him. But this notion, like, whatever the Big Ten does, the SEC does worse. That's always what I'll lean to. And which I like. I mean, I like all this part about college football. I like that Ryan Day knew that, like, these guys are going to fucking fire me if I don't beat Michigan.
Yeah.
We better figure this fucking out and uncover it. Like, I think I find that fast. It's why college football is the number 2 sport in the country. And when we say college football is the number 2 sport in the country, it's really like the 10, 15 programs that are carrying the fucking water for everyone because they're just so fascinating with all this crazy shit. You see the thing that went viral about Lane Kiffin kicking the kid out of his office?
Yeah, well, listen to the audio today.
To me, it was like, I think actually he just told him to get out. What did I didn't even think it sounded that bad. I think it made Lane look decent.
It's always to me, I always question, like, when you record somebody else and then, the kid sounds distraught in the audio. So you want to be sensitive to that. But at the same time, it's like, well, you're recording. You're recording because you're going to share this. So are you actually distraught, or just kind of playing it up, trying to set the other person up to sound bad? Right?
Especially when Lane was like, bro, I've been calling you for 2 weeks and you wouldn't show up to my office. Every human being is going to be like, that's a little weird. Like, you just call me or text me back. Like, I'm the head coach. I'm calling you to come in here. Get the fuck out of here. That guy's such a loser. Like, that is such a loser move. It's one thing, like, you're going to go to jail. You wear the wire or whatever. When stuff like that happens, to just try to make another guy look bad, but it's not, like, what are we really talking about? It's one thing to, like, catch this guy. This guy's doing insurance fraud, $50 million. It's like Lane Kiffin's just kicking you off the team because you won't call him back. Like, you think in your warped mind this is way crazier than it actually is. I don't see how and I actually just clicked on the comments and everyone was like, yeah, I mean, what's this kid talking about? Most people had Lane's back.
Oh, I didn't read I see the comment. God, I had to read the comments on a good story like that.
But
I had one other thing for you, but I don't remember what it was. All right, anything else?
I don't totally feel comfortable. It's like, why I wouldn't reshare, even though who cares? It's already out there. Like Belichick leaving the thing, Lane video. Like, it's just kind of, there's a level of like, what the fuck are we doing?
Oh, I agree. I mean, the Belichick ring video to me is, I'd take it another, because it's completely, there's not even a debate about whether he's acting appropriately or inappropriately, right? Just a
He's just
man
leaving a
a house.
home.
Like,
But I looked up today at the gym guy, and the TVs are typically on just like ESPN2, ESPN, CNBC, and like Fox News at this, like, the 50 TVs in a row, and just like CNN, just on the basic channels. Well, McAfee's on ESPN2, and they're showing the video over and over.
the Bill
And
video.
I was like, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, but it's like, what are we?
I know.
I think it's kind of fucked up. Now, once it's out there, you could argue it is what it is. It's all over.
Yeah, but the only reason it's out there is because it's gonna, like, it gets out because it's gonna become massive, right? There's no stopping it. There's just no stopping it.
I don't even think it would be that big if it was just him with a shirt on. You wouldn't even be able to. It could be his house.
If he had a shirt on, then it'd just be a guy. Yeah, it wouldn't be anything.
It was the shirt off and the jeans.
Did you have a belt on? I think he had a belt on too.
I had some people text me saying, like, actually, he looks pretty good for 72.
That's what I thought. I thought he came off good. We talked the other day, bad games, Jags, Niners. Other than that, I'll tell you, I mean, Bengals, Texans, a solid game. Texans are 4-4.
DeMeco's coming.
CJ Stroud is coming. I watched somebody put together like a 2-minute video of like CJ Stroud's best throws. It's an incredible video. They put music.
They put the old throws.
Did you watch the one? It had like the old Monday Night Countdown Berman music on it.
No, I just went to YouTube. I just went to YouTube and typed in his highlights on the next day.
Somebody put out a video.
I watched some of the game, but
so that's a solid game.
I actually think the Raider Jets game's pretty intriguing.
Bro, I'm with you. I'm all in on that game. Like, I'm so happy they didn't flex that game.
That's a good. Whoever wins that game is going to be feeling pretty good.
Yep.
If the Raiders win, they're 5-5, and they are alive.
Alive. If the Jets win, they're 5-4, and Aaron's coming back from his 2-month Achilles recovery.
Oh. Chargers Lions, not terrible.
Is Dable going to get fired year after being coach of the year? 2-7 going to the Cowboys.
I don't think they're going to win. You look at their schedule. I mean, they obviously the quarterback's around too, so it's kind of like the year when Kyle was rolling with CJ and Nick Mullen. You're just kind of fucked.
Yeah.
And those teams even had more talent. Like I think he's just kind of screwed. Like, what's he going to do? They're just going to lose a lot. They haven't played the Eagles yet.
Lions Chargers a sneaky game.
I think that's you could argue top 2 or 3 game of the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, Commander Seahawks interesting, potentially interesting, I guess, depending on which. Saints at Vikings.
Where's that game?
Browns Ravens. Which?
The Seattle game.
Seattle. In Seattle.
I'd say that's borderline must win for Seattle. Like, if you want to win the division. It's hard to say. I mean, the Niners could lose. What am I talking about?
Yeah, they could just play hot potato with the division.
Yeah, never mind. It's not must win at all.
No one will win a game the rest of the year and someone will win the division. I guess they play each other, so that's not possible. But anyway, on that note, that's the schedule this week. Any big college football games this weekend?
Penn State, Michigan.
Yep.
Oregon, USC, 15-point underdog. Tempted to play USC.
That's a late game, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Utah, UW. Utah's a 9.5-point underdog, but it's just UW's trying to do something no one ever done in the Pac-12, go undefeated. Utah's the kind of team that can just give you hell.
My question is, if they go undefeated and then lose in the conference championship in a rematch to Oregon, who goes?
Oregon.
And then UW gets left out as a one-loss team?
Yeah, or maybe they still get in too, depending. Like, would they get in over the one-loss loser of the Big Ten, whichever, Ohio State, Michigan loser, if whoever doesn't go to the Big Ten title game?
One major curveball? What if Bama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game and Georgia's one loss and they're back-to-back champs? And Bama's obviously would have to go in, right? As the SEC champs. People would be like, well, you can't. Georgia's fucking earned it, right?
Yeah,
especially if
that was
a
the
tight
thing.
game.
That's what McElroy was saying about the other day. Yeah.
Or they do it. I did agree. Like, are they going eye test? Are they going resume? What are we doing? Like, are we just kind of picking individual team? Now, you could argue like Ohio State and Michigan, wherever they're ranked, it doesn't totally matter because they're going to play each other. Whoever wins that game if they're both undefeated, it's probably going to be one.
Well, the
right?
problem with, but the reason I don't have a problem with using different standards is like there's different schedules. So like if you play a shitty schedule, we better go eye test. If you play a good schedule, it's a little harder to go eye test because you've played good teams. Michigan has not played anybody. So they better be a good eye test team because they're not going to be a resume team. If I watch them, like, I don't know, but then I look at your schedule and it's twice as hard as somebody else's schedule, you're a resume team. Like, so I do get, like, that's where I disagree with McElroy. We can't have a uniform evaluation because we don't have uniform schedules. Go look at Michigan's schedule. It's awful. Don't play anybody. So,
and even this week, let's say they beat, if they beat Penn State by 20 or whatever, are they even getting that much credit? Because Penn State played Ohio State and they were terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So
but I think it's pretty clear when you watch them, they're good, right? I think that's a huge part of it, right? I mean, they're killing
without
it. I mean,
question. And if you have a 12-team playoff, we don't really, these debates are about worse teams, right? These are debates about the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th best team. And then it's like, whatever. But we're talking about a 14 playoff with a chance to win the championship. You know, like if you don't play anybody and you've looked bad in the playoff, I'm sorry. I don't care about this quote unquote scandal, but they have not earned the benefit of the doubt as a program. And Harbaugh coaching in college and in the playoff is great for business. I love to see it.
Yeah, they got to win out. And there's no one loss.
No question.
Team getting in.
And in your scenario where Georgia gets beat by Alabama, then I think the team that loses the Ohio State Michigan game does not get in the playoff. I think that
they'd be done.
I think Oregon, like a one-loss Pac-12 champ, Oregon gets in over that team. Now there's still
my
a Big
question,
12 champ, but they're not in the mix.
Yeah, would Georgia as a one
Florida State?
Well, if Florida State runs the table, they're in, right?
Right.
And then the question would be,
what if they lose their
Georgia
championship game?
They'd be out. But would Georgia
TCU did
at one loss, would they get in over Texas one loss Big 12 champion?
I don't think so. I think that it's just such an easy one if you're on the committee. Like, hey, let's start with let's go with conference champions.
Yeah. Michigan, Ohio State's in. Florida State, if they win, they're in.
Yep.
Texas, if they win, is in. And then whoever wins the Pac-12 is in. Am I skipping something?
No.
So it'd be Texas. Let's just say Michigan.
There's 5 Power 5.
Florida State.
If they're all one, if you get like a bunch of undefeated and one-loss conference champs, like somebody's getting left out.
So let's just say Georgia, Michigan, undefeated. Those are easy. Georgia, Michigan, undefeated. Florida State, undefeated, in.
Right, 3.
And then it'd be between Oregon and Texas, probably.
Yeah. Yep.
What would they do? Would that be pretty controversial?
Yeah, it'd be tough.
Would they take Texas as just bigger brand?
They could.
Oregon's huge, but
they could. I mean, they could also go. I think Oregon gets a little. I think there's a subconscious like lean towards the Pac-12 teams this year.
Oregon's ahead of them now, right?
Yeah. I think they've
Washington's
looked better.
5,
That's the other thing. Like, Oregon, I think, has looked better.
Yeah.
So actually, to answer your question, I think they go if Oregon keeps playing this way, and here's the other thing, they would get credit. You know, this happened. I'd forgotten about this. You beat the team that beat you in a weird way. People are like, oh, undefeated. You avenged your loss. I mean, they don't really say undefeated, but I think you get credit when you beat the team that beat you.
I would agree.
So I think Oregon would be in over Texas. Like I think Oregon or Washington, whichever one wins the league, as long as they're undefeated or one loss, is in.
Agreed.
Future Big Ten teams. I think they're getting a little bit of a push. Anyway. All right. On that note.
Godspeed.